Everyone thought the story was over. Four-engine wide-bodies were supposed to be museum pieces, too heavy, too thirsty, too expensive. Airlines around the world had parked them in deserts, swapped them for sleek two-engine jets, and promised they'd never look back. Cheaper, greener, smarter. That was the mantra. So why is a major German airline suddenly pulling the old Airbus A340 out of retirement and calling it a matter of survival? This is the paradox that's shocking the industry. A jet most people wrote off as a fuel-guzzling relic has somehow become a strategic lifeline. And it's happening at the same time modern aircraft deliveries are stalling. Boeing delivering just 54 of the 70 jets promised in 2024, Airbus only 65 of 80. The shiny new twins that were supposed to power the next decade simply aren't arriving fast enough. And now, a plane that was meant to fade into history is roaring back into the sky, forcing airlines, investors, and passengers to ask a bigger question. What went so wrong that an outdated four-engine jet suddenly makes more sense than the newest aircraft in the world? In this video, we're going to break down the why, the supply chain chaos behind the scenes, the how, the surprising advantages of reviving a long-retired aircraft, and the consequences. How this comeback could force the entire aviation industry to rethink its strategy. Because this isn't nostalgia, it's survival. And the A340 comeback might be the biggest warning the airline world has had in years. For almost 3 decades, airlines have been obsessed with one thing: efficiency. Every new generation of aircraft promised the same magic recipe: lighter materials, smarter engines, and fewer moving parts. And the biggest symbol of that shift was the move from 4 engines to 2. Twin-engine jets like the Boeing 787 and Airbus A350 completely changed the game. They burned far less fuel, needed less maintenance, and saved airlines millions of dollars per year. For a business where a 1% change in fuel burn can make or break a route, this was revolutionary. It was like switching from a gas-guzzling SUV to a hybrid that could fly across oceans. But there was a catch. One most passengers never think about. Two-engine jets have to follow something called ETOPS. In simple terms, ETOPS decides how far a plane is allowed to fly from the nearest safe airport in case it loses an engine. It's usually between 180 and 240 minutes. That sounds huge, but when you draw those circles across the oceans, it creates surprisingly narrow corridors. And airlines must follow them. Four-engine jets don't have that limitation. They can fly almost anywhere, directly over remote oceans, vast deserts, or the poles, without worrying about alternates. For decades, this didn't matter because the world believed twins were reliable enough and manufacturers were delivering them fast enough to replace the older fleets completely. Airlines planned their entire future around this assumption. They placed massive orders years in advance. They designed network schedules, training programs, crew rotations, all built around the idea that the next wave of twin jets would arrive on time. And for a long time, that system worked, right up until it didn't. This is the blind spot that set the stage for our story, an industry so optimized for efficiency that it forgot what happens when the supply chain stops cooperating. Then the plan collapsed. Not because passengers disappeared, not because fuel prices spiked, but because the factories simply couldn't build the planes. In 2024, both major manufacturers stumbled at the same time. Boeing delivered 54 out of the 70 aircraft it had promised. Airbus wasn't far behind, handing over only 65 of 80. On paper, those missing jets might look like a small delay. In reality, for a hub airline, it's like removing key pieces from a domino chain. Everything else starts to fall apart. Without those new aircraft, routes that depended on fresh capacity suddenly had no planes. Some long-haul flights were canceled outright. Others were quietly removed from schedules before passengers even noticed. And when you cancel one flight at a hub, you don't just lose that flight. You lose hundreds of connecting passengers who were supposed to feed into the rest of the network. That ripple effect costs real money. According to the airline's own internal estimates from the script, a single disrupted long-haul route can bleed hundreds of thousands of dollars per day. Multiply that across an entire season, and you're talking millions in lost revenue, missed connections, compensation payouts, hotel vouchers, and damaged trust. And trust is expensive. If your reliability drops even a little, passengers quietly shift to your competitors. The script even notes that a 1% drop in reliability could cost an airline around $50 million per year. Whether the exact number is perfect or not, the logic is brutally clear. Reliability is money. This wasn't a small hiccup. It was a chain reaction. Fewer deliveries leading to fewer planes, then canceled routes, lost traffic, lost revenue, and shrinking market share. And it backed the airline into a corner where it had to make a decision nobody expected. For a big hub carrier, decisions like this aren't theoretical. They hit every part of the business at once. When your network is built around thousands of daily connections, even one missing aircraft can break the entire chain. So the airline suddenly had to face a brutal no-win choice. Option 1, ground flights until the new planes finally arrive. But grounding flights isn't as simple as removing a line from the schedule. Every canceled long-haul route triggers a cascade. Passengers miss onward connections, competitors scoop up your customers, and the airline is stuck paying out compensation, hotel costs, rebookings, and crew disruptions. And once someone switches to another airline, maybe Qatar, Emirates, or even a European rival, it's very hard to win them back. The math gets ugly fast. The airline's internal calculations from the script say that even a 1% drop in reliability could cost around $50 million per year. Think about that. Just being slightly less reliable than last year can cost as much as buying a brand new aircraft. Option 2. Keep the schedule alive at all costs, even if it means flying older, less efficient jets that burn more fuel. And that's where the A340 comes in. In the short term, capacity matters more than efficiency. A full flight that burns extra fuel is still far more valuable than a canceled flight that earns nothing and pushes passengers toward competitors. Hub airlines know that once you start losing market share on key routes, the slide can be permanent. So the choice becomes painfully clear: a more expensive flight, or no flight at all. From a distance, reviving the A340 looks old-fashioned. But up close, inside the pressure cooker of airline economics, it starts to look like a survival strategy. The only way to keep the network alive while waiting for the modern jets that never arrived. And that decision leads straight into the heart of this story. Why an old 4-engine jet suddenly makes perfect sense in a crisis. On paper, the Airbus A340 looks like the wrong answer to every modern airline problem. 4 engines instead of 2, higher fuel burn, older systems, more maintenance. It's the aviation version of driving a V8 pickup during a fuel price spike. But here's the twist. In today's crisis, the A340 solves problems that newer jets can't. The biggest advantage is simple but powerful. No ETOPS restrictions. Twin-engine jets must stay within a set number of minutes from an emergency airport. That's why flight paths sometimes curve strangely over oceans or avoid remote areas like the poles. But the A340 with 4 engines isn't bound by those rules. It can fly straight lines, take optimal routes, and avoid massive detours. In practical terms, that means fewer delays, fewer weather-related reroutes, and fewer diversions. And in a period where schedule reliability is everything, that freedom is worth real money. Now, yes, the A340 burns more fuel. According to the script's figures, it can use an additional 10 to 15 tons of fuel on certain long-haul flights. At typical jet fuel prices, that's roughly $12,000 to $18,000 extra per trip. Not ideal. But compare that to a canceled flight that costs tens of thousands in refunds, hotel bills, and lost future passengers. Suddenly, the fuel penalty starts to feel like the cheaper option. Reactivating these aircraft isn't free either. They've been sitting in storage, some in desert hangars, waiting for their final retirement. Bringing them back to life requires inspections, part replacements, and cabin updates. The script notes that the airline's broader reactivation strategy may cost around $200 million. A big number, but far smaller than the losses from months of reduced capacity. And once revived, the A340 slots perfectly into routes where ETOPS is a headache. Think long legs over the South Atlantic, or missions like Frankfurt to Cape Town, and similar long hauls where diversion airports are sparse. These are routes where a four-engine jet isn't just usable, it's strategically better. So while the A340 looks outdated from the outside, on the map and in the spreadsheets, it fits the moment perfectly. When the A340s returned to service, the goal was simple: keep flights operating and protect the network. And surprisingly, that's exactly what happened. According to the airline's reported figures from the script, the reactivated A340s delivered a 98% on-time performance on key long-haul routes. That is extraordinarily high for intercontinental flights, where weather, congestion, and maintenance delays normally chip away at punctuality. But because the A340 isn't restricted by ETOPS corridors, it could take more direct paths and avoid many of the bottlenecks that slow down twin-engine operations. Passenger disruption also dropped. The script cites a 1.2% cancellation rate compared to an industry average of around 2.5%. Again, whether the exact number varies slightly in real life, the message is clear. The old jet kept the schedule stable when newer jets weren't available. This stability wasn't abstract, it protected real routes. Flights like Frankfurt to Chicago, Munich to Johannesburg, and long South Atlantic services stayed active because the A340 could cover them without operational headaches. These routes feed massive amounts of connecting traffic into the airline's network. Keeping them alive prevented a downward spiral of lost passengers and shrinking market share. Meanwhile, the airline didn't stop modernizing. New Airbus A350s with the upgraded Allegris cabin were still joining the fleet, just slower than planned. So passengers sometimes saw a strange contrast. One day a cutting-edge A350 with the airline's newest seat design, the next day a revived A340 with refreshed interiors designed to buy time until more A350s arrived. And oddly enough, passengers didn't hate it. Many appreciated having their flights operate reliably, and aviation fans were thrilled to see a four-engine jet back in service. For a plane that had been written off, the A340 ended up doing exactly what the airline needed, protecting the schedule until the future finally showed up. So what does all of this tell us? The unexpected return of the A340 wasn't just a quirky moment in aviation. It revealed something much bigger about how airlines survive in a world of uncertainty. First, it showed that four-engine aircraft aren't truly dead. They may not be efficient enough to compete with modern twins in normal times. But when the system cracks, when engines fail, when supply chains stall, when certification backlogs slow deliveries, older aircraft suddenly become powerful insurance policies. A340s, 747-400s, even A380s have quietly proven that reliability and flexibility can matter just as much as fuel burn. Second, this episode exposed how fragile the modern long-haul ecosystem actually is. Airlines built their fleets on the assumption that engine makers would hit their durability targets and that aircraft manufacturers would deliver on time. But recent years prove that even the biggest companies can fall behind, and when they do, the shockwaves ripple across the entire global network. Third, it's a reminder that technology doesn't move in a straight line. The industry spent a decade chasing ultra-efficient twin-engine jets, and for good reason. But as soon as one link in that chain broke, airlines had to reach back into the past to keep the future running. The A340 became a bridge, buying time, keeping routes open, and preserving market stability until new A350s and 787s could finally arrive. And finally, This situation offers a preview of what's coming. As demand for long-haul travel grows, as climate pressures rise, and as next-generation engines like the UltraFan or GE9X still face their own hurdles, airlines may need to rethink how old fits into new. Because sometimes the jets we thought were obsolete are exactly the ones that save the system. The A340 wasn't meant to return, but it did, and it proves something almost poetic. In aviation, nothing is ever truly gone, only waiting for the moment it becomes useful again. When you step back, the whole A340 comeback story says something bigger than aviation. It's a reminder that progress isn't always smooth, and resilience often hides in the places we least expect. A few years ago, everyone thought the future of flying was locked in. Ultra-efficient twin-engine jets, carbon-neutral goals, and a steady stream of new aircraft rolling off assembly lines. But one engine crisis, one supply chain bottleneck, and one certification slowdown later, and suddenly, the entire system had to rethink its assumptions. The A340's return shows that aviation is still vulnerable, still human, and still learning. It also proves that sometimes the systems we consider outdated are exactly the ones that hold everything together when the new ones falter. And that's what makes this moment so fascinating. The aviation industry is entering a decade where demand is high, technology is changing fast, and reliability has never been more important. Airlines won't just need the newest jets, they'll need backup plans, flexibility, and the willingness to use every tool available, old or new. So the next time you see an A340 at an airport, a big, quiet four-engine jet that most of the world wrote off, remember it didn't just come back. It came back because aviation needed it. And chances are, this won't be the last time an old aircraft ends up saving the future.